podcast, season 2, episode 6, I believe. I'm Matt, and this is my host Dave joining me here today. We're as of recording, we're one night out from the start of the regular season, so things are really starting to heat up. I think today we'll just touch on a few of the headlines that have been going on since the last episode, and then we'll touch a little bit about the Bruins and start getting into the main swing of the podcast moving forward. And I also have a little game to play at the end of this podcast. But first up, what's going on, Dave?
Not a whole lot, obviously, creeping uh, very close to the regular season. This time, tomorrow night, we'll be just a couple hours away from puck drop on our first couple of games, so obviously that's pretty exciting. It's been a pretty long off season, especially for us Bruins fans, looking for kind of a crack at redemption, ready to get right back at it after a bit of a disappointing finish last year. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow night.
Yeah, the start of the season is always super exciting. In terms of just getting something to watch back on in the evenings, the start of the season is just it always seems fresh. There's a lot of new faces on a lot of different teams and a lot of chances for teams to improve and maybe even get worse. So it should be exciting. With that being said, I guess we could start off by highlighting some of the things that have gone down in the last week or so. We did have some of the last RFA signings. So to touch on those, we do have Mikko Rantanen, Patrick Laine, and Kyle Connor. So do you want to give some details and thoughts on those, Dave?
Yeah. First of all, I think that all three of these guys got pretty fair deals for both the team and the player. We'll start off with Mikko Rantanen, who signed a 9.25 million AAV deal over 6 years. I think that's a pretty fair deal for Mikko Rantanen. Obviously, he's a fantastic player. He was looking for close to Mitch Marner money, and he got pretty close to it. I think the fact that Nathan MacKinnon's only making, I think, like $6.3 million, kind of, kind of presented that contract from getting too high up. Like, when Mitch Marner was asking for the contract he got, it was in relation to the other top players, but. Nonetheless, I think Mikko Rantanen certainly deserves his money. I think he's going to go out there and probably put up between 80 and 90 points again this year. He's a huge part of one of the best lines in hockey right now with Landeskog and McKinnon. So I think it's a good thing that the Avalanche got him signed, because without Rantanen on that line, it could have been, I don't want to say it would have been a mess, but it definitely wouldn't be as elite as it was last year. And hopefully they can have a bit of a repeat season, because it's great for the game to see these young stars have fantastic seasons, and hopefully he'll carry that into this coming year.
Yeah, good to see Avalanche get one of their big players back in the fold before the start of the regular season, so we won't miss any games. He may be a little bit rusty just because he came into camp quite late, but I don't foresee him missing too much of a step starting the season alongside McKinnon and Landeskog on that first line. Of course, who do you want to talk about next? Connor or Laine? Which Winnipeg Jet do you want to touch on next?
Well, I think first off, we'll just start by just kind of announcing both their contracts. Two very, money wise pretty similar, but term wise very different. Patrick Laine signed a 2-year bridge deal worth 6.75 million a year, whereas Kyle Connor signed a 7-year deal worth $7.14 million a year. I think again a pretty fair deal for both guys. Kyle Connor has had back-to-back 30-plus goal seasons, so I think he's obviously a great offensive player, and I think he has more of a two-way touch to his game than Patrick Laine does. So good for him to get a bit of term locked up with a good amount of cash there. He's a great player in Winnipeg, and I don't think there was any risk involved with signing a player like him. Whereas I think if they signed Laine to a longer term deal, there was certainly more risk involved, because he's proven to be a bit of a one-dimensional player. I think he has to really prove himself over these 2 years that he's going to be in Winnipeg. He has to prove that he still has obviously great offensive capabilities. Maybe try and be a little bit less hot and cold, and
Yep.
at the same time, he's got to try and develop his two-way game as well, because I think he was a bit of a defensive liability last year, but nonetheless, I think these are two good deals for two young players at Winnipeg. Obviously, it's good news all around for Jets fans.
Yeah, I like both of these deals. Connor, I think he probably could have even made a little bit more. I think he's a fantastic player, and he, like you said, he has the two-way element to his game more so than line A. And so to have him locked up at seven by basically 7 million a year, I think is fantastic for the Jets. He's going to be in their top six forwards for a long time now. In terms of line A, I know it's basically just him betting on himself. He probably could have signed a longer deal, but it would have been around the same or less money. But he wants more. He wants to prove himself, and I think he said something along the lines of, "I'm going to score a lot of goals." So see what can happen. I think he does still have the 50 goal potential because he can just basically, you said, get hot and score like he did last year, 5 goals in one game. But I think Winnipeg Jets fans are definitely hoping that he can stay a little bit more consistent than he has in the past. But like I said, I like both deals in terms of the Jets, just like you. So yeah, so it's good to see all the RFAs are now signed. Well, all the big ones anyway that were on the list at the start of the month. So that's always good.
Yeah, it's good to see that no one's holding out this year. You look at the situation that Nylander got himself into last year with the Leafs. He came in, I think, in December last year, and I think that really
Yeah, he waited
affected
to the
his
last
play.
day.
Yeah, I think that really affected him. He
Yeah.
was, he wasn't, he didn't get off to a very good start. I think he played a little bit better towards the end, but when he first came back, you can tell that the time off really affected him. So I think players kind of saw that and they knew that they wanted to get involved with their teams as early as possible. So it's good for the players, good for the teams, and good for the league.
Yep. So next up on the podcast, with preseason now wrapped up, let's talk a little bit about our Boston Bruins and some of the last minute cuts they made, some of the injuries that have come up in the last few days, and some signings. So first off, I like to say that the Bruins ended up putting Solaric and Petrovic, who they signed to a 1 year, $700,000 deal on waivers. I think they both have cleared now and are now with Providence. They also assigned Frederick, Studnicka, and Bjork to Providence as well. And basically, it looks like they have the roster that they're going to be going with for opening night now. What do you think? What are your thoughts on some of the last second or the last round of cuts for the Bruins?
Well, nothing really surprised me there. I think the cuts that we saw were probably pretty expected. The expected roster right now on paper is looking a lot like what I think most people expected it to. Um, I think it's good that they got a lot of their young guys involved in some preseason action and obviously helped their development a little bit. And getting Petrovic signed, I think it's a good signing. I mean, it's you can never have too many depth defensemen. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, the Bruins already have two of their NHL ready defensemen on the IR in John Moore and Kevin Miller. So it's always good to have some depth there. But overall, I think for the most part, the roster that we're going to be looking at is going to be very similar to last year, barring a few changes that they made. I would expect that the first line is going to be the same. Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak, they were obviously fantastic last year. I don't see any reason why that would change, unless at some point during the year they have some difficulty spreading out the
Yeah,
scoring. They've been known to put Pasternak down on the second line to mix things up a little bit,
yeah.
but
To touch on that, there was a press conference today where Bruce Cassidy did say that Pasternak would be getting some significant playing time with Krejci this year. I mean, he has said that in the past, and it just seems like they just keep going back to that first line. But he did say that today in the press conference. Just thought I'd bring that up.
yeah, and I think that's fine. I mean, to spread the scoring out a little bit is good. You don't want them to be too top heavy, but I think when you're looking at the second line, there's some great goal scoring potential there as well. I mean, you look at what Krejci did last year; he had put up, I believe, 72 points. DeBrusque is had close to 30 goals last year. I think this is going to be the year that he really breaks out and probably puts 30 on the board. So there's going to be scoring on that second line. I think the second line right wing is just the big question mark right now, and certainly
As per
Pasternak
usual.
could fill that spot. I think if Pasternak were to play there, they'd likely throw Danton Heinen or someone of the sort on the first line. So it's a little easier to have that kind of a hole on your third line wing as opposed to your second line wing. It's easier to solve that issue, but Right now, they have, I think, Carson Kuhlman penciled in on that second line, and he showed last year that he can play. He had a pretty, uh, he played in a couple games in the playoffs, and I think he played pretty well. He showed that he could play pretty well in the season too. I think, he's not the ideal second line player, but right now, that's I think at least what it's looking like they're going to run with.
Yeah, I don't see why that shouldn't give him a chance. He did play pretty good in the playoffs and near the end of the season last year in that spot. So I'm hoping that he can keep it up in that regard. I saw today that Brett Ritchie was penciled in on the fourth line and David Backes was penciled in on the third line. I think maybe some of those were due to injuries, as it has been shown or has been talked about that David Krejci and Joachim Nordstrom are hurt at the moment. David Krejci is, I think, closer than Nordstrom at coming back. Cassidy did confirm today that Nordstrom would not be starting the season, which I think is fine. They were doing this fourth line rotation all year last year, and I think Richie has had a decent camp, so I think that he can step into that fourth line and play pretty effectively. I don't think he'll chip in much offensively, but hopefully they can continue their strong two-way game on that fourth line, and hopefully it seems like Backus has played his way into the lineup as for now, and see how he can play on that third line right wing role starting the season. But with that being said, I also brought up at the press conference today, uh, Bruce Cassidy did talk about, along with the GM, talked about some contracts, including Torrey Krug and Charlie Coyle, who are both going to be UFA at the end of this season. They did mention that contract negotiations have started with both of them, and if everything goes according to plan, that both players will be locked up long term with the Bruins, which is kind of the first you've heard of the Charlie Coyle contract. We weren't really sure what their opinion was, but after watching what he did last year in the playoffs and also this year so far in the preseason, he's looked dominant, and I think he could play anywhere on that third or second line, and maybe even center the first line if Bergeron goes down at any point. And of course, Torrey Krug. He's just been a power play specialist, great two-way defenseman for a long time for the Bruins, and I don't want him to go anywhere as well. So that was some positive news. So hopefully they can get both of those guys wrapped up and signed.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. I mean, it's difficult right now with Torrey Krug. I know a lot of his comments led people to believe that he wants to be signed in the middle of the season this year. He doesn't. He'd prefer not to wait until the end of the season. He wants to get something done as soon as possible, and I think he's going to be demanding quite a bit of money. I think he could easily make $8 million with the numbers he's been putting up. That's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but that's kind of the situation that they're in right now, and I think the Bruins are in a bit of a tight cap space. They have some more money coming their way at the end of the season, but if they were able to somehow move a huge contract like David Backes's, it would make signing these guys significantly easier. You mentioned Charlie Coyle. I think he's certainly, at least if he can play even remotely close to the level he was playing at during the playoffs last year, I think he could easily play his way into a nice new contract with Boston. He had a bit of a weak regular season when he was traded to Boston last year. I think he only had like 2 or 3 points. But then once it hit the playoffs, obviously he was dominant on the third line, and he's shown that he can play up and down the lineup. So I really like Charlie Coyle. So I too would like to see both of these guys locked up.
Yeah, they're both significant pieces for the Bruins for sure. With that being said, I guess we can touch on the Bruins again later when we talk about their first week matchup starting the regular season. But moving on to a few, just to bang through a few headlines that have gone down in the last few days. In terms of the waiver wire, I did hear that Vancouver was interested in picking up Luke Shen from the Tampa Bay Lightning, but I don't think that has happened. I think Luke Shen may have cleared. Some other people were picked up today, however, off the waiver wire. I saw that Eric Comrie was picked up by Arizona, the goaltender from Winnipeg, and Dahlstrom, Dahlstrom, I think his name is, was picked up from Chicago by Winnipeg, which was interesting. There was a few guys that were placed on waivers the last few days, like Ho-Sang, Sprong, Patan. I was thinking that teams might want to give them a chance because why not? Like I feel like they could definitely play in the NHL and maybe have a significant impact, maybe in a different spot than what they've been trying to play for, but no teams bid on those guys. I don't know what you think about some of the guys that have been on waivers to start the
Yeah,
season.
there's been some obviously not huge names, but some young guys that I certainly thought maybe someone would take a swing at, but it seems that no one's really been budging in that regard. I saw that I think Eric Comrie got picked up today by
Yeah, I just
Arizona.
said
So
that.
oh, sorry, I must have missed that. But I think that's good. He's a young guy that can maybe benefit from a change of scenery, but yeah, like you said, some younger players. Like I honestly thought when Josh Hosang hit waivers that someone was gonna take a
Yeah, I
shot
thought
at
so
him. I
too.
thought, he's not been known to be maybe the best character guy, but um,
Definitely has some
he's
offensive talent.
he's definitely got some skill. And I was looking at it and I just thought like it's a pretty low risk attempt for maybe even a team like Edmonton or something to just take a shot at it,
Yeah.
and you never know what's gonna happen. But yeah, not a whole lot of action in that regard.
Speaking of Edmonton, I don't have this written down, but I saw that Thomas Jurko played his way into a roster spot on Edmonton. He's basically been in the AHL his whole career. He did have some hype, but then got picked up and signed by former Detroit Red Wings GM who drafted him, Ken Holland, and he actually played his way onto the team. So good for him. He was playing with McDavid and James Neal the other night on a line. I don't know if that's going to hold true at the start of the season, but apparently he's going to be in at the start of the season, so that's good for him. Um, some other things I just have jotted down here. There was confirmation by Bob McKenzie and Elliot Friedman that the Dallas Stars are still searching for a trade for Julius Honka, looking for maybe a second or third round pick or even a young player. There was also a rumor that Jack Johnson was on the move or going to be on the move from Pittsburgh, but Jim Rutherford came out today and said that the rumors were all baloney and he expects him to be their lineups to start the season. I did see that Sidney Crosby blocked a shot, and a lot of people were holding their breath, but I think he's going to be fine in terms of an injury that he was being evaluated for. Another few things that I just have to ask your opinion on. Three things, actually. First of all, what are your thoughts on those Anaheim Ducks third jerseys that got revealed?
I love them. I thought they were incredible. Orange is my favorite color, so obviously when a nice orange jersey comes out, I got a bit of a soft spot for it. But I love that logo. I really wish they would just
The
go back
logo is,
to the. I really wish they'd go back to the Mighty Ducks logo. I don't know why they stick with the one they have right now. I think everyone is calling for them to switch back, but hopefully they wear those jerseys a lot this year. I think they're great.
yeah, I like them too. I don't know if I like them more than the purple. I have to see them in actual action, but definitely a flashy jersey and better than their regular ones for sure. Evander Kane has been officially suspended for 3 games after pushing an official in a preseason game against Vegas that had
Yeah.
114 penalty minutes. Maybe some boil over from that missed call that cost Vegas the series last year in the playoffs. But now Kane will miss the first three games of the season for a stupid
Yeah,
mistake that he made.
that's see, I have mixed feelings on that because when you watch the video, it's pretty clear he I mean he was going for a slash. Him and I can't remember who the Vegas player was, but they were obviously going back and forth. The ref kind of got in the middle of it just to break it up. It was a pretty basic play from a ref, and Kane wasn't looking. He felt the player behind him, and he turned and kind of swung his stick, and it was unfortunate that he hit the ref. In my opinion, he clearly did not mean to hit the ref.
I don't think
Um,
that's even what he got suspended
no,
for.
no,
Where
no.
he
But
pushed.
then he skated away, and then the ref kind of just tackled him and took him down, and it
Yeah,
was a bit of a mess. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, anytime you get involved with a referee like that, you're going to face a suspension. But
yeah. I think
um,
it's a. I
I
think
don't
it
know.
was like once you do that, it's the guaranteed 3 game suspension no matter what. It's part of the rule book. So
Yeah,
he was
but
probably expecting it at that point.
I don't think it was intentional, but it was a really weird play. Like
Yeah,
he
no.
started skating away, and then the ref kind of just tackled him and took him down. It was
Yeah, I
anyway.
don't know.
Is what it is. It's in the books now. 3 game suspension for Evander Kane.
Yeah. Uh, another tough pill to swallow, but it was still cool. I had to appreciate it. Was that the Blues got their Stanley Cup rings? They were really, really, really nice. I have to say, but it still stings as a Bruins fan to see them for sure. But I really like the design and what they included on the ring. I don't know if you got a chance to see them.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I saw that they put Lila's name on the inside of the ring. They put the engravements of all the teams in the series count on the inside of the ring so that they beat the Bruins, obviously, in 7 games, for example. So they had the 4-3 count on the inside. I thought that was pretty cool as well. And then on the back of the ring, they had "Play Gloria" there, of course, their go-to song after turning the season around last year. So I also really like the design of the rings. I thought they looked pretty sweet. Obviously, I wish it was a Bruins ring, not a Blues ring, but what can you do?
And I think they're giving up the play Gloria now.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was the magic for one season, and they just closed
yeah.
it out perfectly, which makes sense for sure. One final note that I have here that I just saw before we started recording was that the Flyers actually lost their last preseason game to a European team. I think it was in Germany or the Czech. And it was the first time an NHL team has done that, lost to a European team since 1967. So
Yeah,
that's a little
I
bit
saw that
crazy.
as well. Now I'm not sure who they had in their lineup for the
So,
game,
yeah,
but
I didn't check that. Didn't have
but
time, but it
yeah,
is kind of just something I thought I'd bring up.
yeah.
Um, Next up, we're finally bringing it back. It's been a few episodes since we had this, and we'll be doing this now regularly for every episode. A section of the podcast, PP, the Pro Line Picks, Dave.
Yep, and this is a segment of the podcast where we kind of run through the some of the games for the next couple of nights, and we evaluate who we think is going to come out on top in these games and kind of give a little bit of reasoning. So, without any further ado, we'll jump right into the first official Pro Line Picks segment of season 2.
Righty. Now, I think we should, since it's the start of the season, I think down the road we'll definitely predict a little bit further into the future so that people can hear what we have thoughts and not just miss the games that we're predicting. But I think just for because it's the start of the season, I think we should predict the first couple of nights. First night because obviously it's the first night, and then the second night because the Bruins are opening their season on Thursday, October 3rd. So for October 2nd, we do have 4 games. First being the Leafs and Senators. I personally have the Leafs winning. They lost both times in the preseason, but I think with both full lineups in, the Leafs are clearly the better team, and I think they should win.
Yeah, I agree. Not much to say there. I mean, Ottawa's probably the worst team in the league. Toronto, one of the top teams in the league. I would say that the Leafs are they're gonna have a good time in this one, putting up some points.
Yeah, it's always hard to predict winners, definitely, especially this early in the season. Not to mention it's the very first night, so you have really nothing to go off besides last season. So next up, we have a matchup between the last two Stanley Cup champions, the Capitals and the Blues. I'm gonna lean towards the Capitals here, just because I have Ovechkin in one of my pools, and I really want him to light it up and start the season off hot. So, and I think the Blues might come out a little slow to start the season. Not to say that that'll technically be the first night, but I think the Blues may be raising their banner that night too. I'm pretty sure it is
Yeah,
in St. Louis.
it's their home opener, so the Blues are going to be raising their banner. I think they're going to be coming out flying. Um, a lot of hype obviously there. Their fans are going to be fired up watching that banner go up. But
Yeah,
nonetheless, I'm going to agree with you. I think the Capitals are going to take it. I got a feeling on the Capitals, and I think the Blues. Maybe
Blues
I'm just being
suck.
a little petty, but yeah, I'd certainly
Yeah,
like to see the
once the
Capitals
season
take it.
starts, it's going to be good. Then we don't have to talk about the Blues beating the Bruins as much anymore, so that'll be good. The third game on the schedule will be the Oilers versus Canucks, a little bit of Western Canadian matchup. Um, I'm gonna go with. Oh, this is tough. You have nothing to go off of, really. I'm gonna pick the Oilers to open it up. I think McDavid's gonna light it up first night of the season. Let's see it.
I'm going Canucks. I think the Canucks are going to be a bit of a better team this year, and I think they're just going to take it over the Oilers.
Yeah, and oh, we do have the Sharks and Golden Knights
Mm-hmm.
opening it up. Wow, after that 114 penalty minute game, and also the playoffs series, like I mentioned earlier. Wow, I'm picking Golden Knights though.
I'm also taking Golden Knights. I think I don't know what it is. I have a funny feeling the Sharks. I mean, they're still going to be a strong team. They're still going to make the playoffs. I just have a funny feeling they're not going to be as strong this year.
Yeah. All right, let's bang through some of these for Thursday night. Jets and Rangers. What do you got?
I'm taking Rangers. I feel good about the Rangers.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting game to watch for sure because there's such turnover for both teams in terms of roster. So I'm gonna go with the Jets. Canadians, Hurricanes. I'm gonna pick the Hurricanes. I think.
I'm going Canadians.
All right. Well, Lightning Panthers, Battle of Florida, first game. Bobrovsky versus Vasilevsky, two of the best goalies in the league. Who do you got?
I'm taking the Florida Panthers. I think Bobrovsky is just gonna be in their head from last season, so I'm taking
Could
the
be true.
Panthers.
Could be true. I'm gonna pick the Lightning though, just because they're probably the
They're the
best team
Lightning.
in baseball. Yeah. Penguins, Sabers. I'm going Crosby all the way. Crosby versus Eichel. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. Penguins.
All right. Predators, Wild. Predators, quite easy for
Yeah,
me to guess.
we'll
But
take Predators on that one.
now for an interesting one, Bruins, Stars. I'm picking the Bruins. They're opening the season strong. Let's go.
Yeah, I gotta go with the Bruins. Although it's kind of scary to see that they might be without their second line centerman. But and I did, of course, earlier in one of the episodes take the Stars as the Cup team, but I'm
Yeah.
taking the Bruins.
Finally, we have Flames and Avalanche and Coyotes, Ducks. I'm just gonna go with Avalanche and Coyotes to end it off with the for the series or the first pro line picks of the season.
And I'll take Flames and Ducks.
All right, we'll see. We'll see how we were at predicting teams that haven't even played yet this season. Come a couple days time. Moving on to another section of the podcast, the Backus Tracker, a fan favorite section of the podcast. We like to give updates on David Backus because he is that $6 million man. Of course, a story did come out this past week that he hired a figure skating coach to improve his skating as after he was unable to do some of the drills that I think 12-year-old figure skaters were doing. So he was trying to improve his skating over the summer, and of course, he did play his way into the lineup as of right now. So so far so good, I guess, for him. Definitely not $6 million worth, but I mean, hopefully he can
I
contribute
mean,
a
I'll
little
say
bit.
this: he had at least on paper, he had a decent preseason. I think he was point per game. I think he had 3 points in 3 games played. I don't anticipate he'll be in the lineup the whole year though if he does start on opening night. Personally, I didn't see him penciled in anywhere. I actually saw that it was going to be Lindholm and Ritchie were both going to be in, and Kuhlman would be in, leaving no room for Backus. But who knows? If he
Yeah,
does
some
make it
injuries
in,
may have
I don't expect much.
favored him or played into his favor to start off the season anyway. Um, do you have anything else on Backus that you want to mention today?
Well, I mean, good for him for at least trying to do something to try and keep up and try and develop his
Stay
game to get
relevant,
back on
yeah.
the ice. But I mean, maybe he'll surprise us. I'm not holding my breath.
Oh, me neither. Um, I guess to finish out today's podcast, we'll play a little bit of the game that I saw on Sportsnet. We're kind of copying it a little bit, but some questions that I prepared this morning, and I gave you them in advance to let's hear some of the answers and let's compare some of our answers. Um, First up, we have who do you have as the Stanley Cup winner?
Dallas Stars, as I mentioned before, I think Dallas Stars are going to be really strong, top to bottom this year. So, Cup champions, Dallas Stars. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm going to stay consistent with what I said as well. I'm going to go with the Washington Capitals to win the Stanley Cup after missing or after losing first round last year and winning the year before. They're going to be back on top. Um, East champion. I of course have Washington because they will be making the Stanley Cup Finals, and you have who do you think Dallas is going to beat?
I have Washington as well. I think they're going to be the strongest team out there this year. I think they're a big, strong, skilled team. And as much as I'd love to see, obviously, the Bruins get back there, I think it's going to be Washington.
I've actually picked a rematch of the finals from a couple of years ago and picked the Golden Knights to once again lose in the finals to Washington. The next question is most likely to exceed expectations in terms of a team.
I think it's going to be Philadelphia. I think when we originally did our Metro Division preview, I don't know if I had them in the playoffs or not, but the more thought I gave it, the more I looked at the team. I definitely think they're going to be in. The more I thought about this team, I really think they're going to have a turnaround season. You never know what they might do. I think they could be dangerous this year, so I think they might exceed expectations.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. I did pick Philadelphia to make the team, and I think there will be another question coming up that I do touch on them a little bit. But my team to exceed expectations this year is actually the Anaheim Ducks because I've seen a lot of people putting them right at the bottom. I think they'll be just missing the playoffs this year. I think they'll be a lot better than people, like a lot more competitive than people think. I think the young guys they got will take a step forward, and I think Raquel will bounce back from a season that he had last year. And of course, you just can't count out a team with a top five goaltender like John Gibson. So I have the Anaheim Ducks to exceed expectations, not do very well, but definitely exceed a lot of the expectations and predictions that I've seen and heard so far. Um, Next up, the most likely to disappoint in terms of a team. Who do you got?
Well, I've been saying this all along. I have the Winnipeg Jets. I'm not crazy with the Winnipeg Jets this year. I think their defense just crumbled, and although they did get their big guys signed, their RFA signed, I think they're still going to be a pretty solid offensive team. I mean, we saw that Hellebuck was a little shaky last year, and that was with really solid defense in front of them, and I think they got worse back there. So, uh, I think I think Winnipeg is going to have a bit of a disappointing season.
Yeah, I was gonna pick Edmonton for this one, but then I thought, like, I don't know how much expectations they actually have, but I expect them to probably do bad again. But I ended up picking Florida for this one just because I think their expectations are a little bit too high. I definitely think they have a very good chance to make the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be as good as people think they're going to be. Um, think that they'll definitely be in the playoffs, but like I said, I think they'll be a little bit lower and a lot less wins than people. That people just expect them to make this huge jump, but I don't know. I'm not completely sold on them yet. Next up, what was the next question here? Oh yeah, some trophies, some predictions on trophies. Who do you have winning the Hart this year, Dave?
I have Claude Giroux winning the Hart Trophy
Ooh,
this year.
hey.
I think Claude Giroux is going to have a big year like he did a couple years ago. And like I said, I just mentioned with the Flyers, I think they're going to have a great season. And I wasn't so crazy about them. I think in that Metro Division preview, I didn't give them as much love as I think they deserved. And I think Giroux is just obviously a fantastic player. I think he's going to be one of the big reasons that the Flyers make the playoffs this year.
All right, I picked Nathan McKinnon. He just missed out on the Hart a couple years ago with when Taylor Hall won it, but I think he really drives that top line for Colorado and really drives the team in terms of offense, and now more so is two-way game too as well. And he's become a great leader on that team, and I think he's going to have an explosive 100-plus point season for the Avs and drive them into the playoffs with ease. So I have McKinnon. Art Ross, so most points. Who do you think is going to get that?
Well, I think, and obviously, I mean, it was tough to pick between the two. I think we'll probably have the same two guys in mind, but I'm taking Nikita Kucherov again this year. I think obviously McDavid is fantastic, but I think just because Kucherov has so much more help, he's gonna have a much easier time putting points on the board.
Yeah, I went with McDavid just because I think he's an absolute freak of nature and hasn't even touched his ceiling yet, and his floor is still 100-plus points. So I think he's just the most consistent. He's going to be up there in points, and I think he'll lead the league once again. So next up, we have the Calder Trophy, Dave, the Rookie of the Year. This is a interesting one.
I took Capo Caco. I think right now the three names that people are throwing into the discussion are obviously Jack Hughes, Capo Caco, and Kale McCarr. I think Capo Caco, although McCarr obviously showed last year in the playoffs that he is NHL ready, I think Caco has proven the same. He's a big guy he's proven that he's been able to play it in a very competitive way, and I have a feeling that Capo Caco is going to have at least a better first year than Jack Hughes, although I don't have any doubt that all three of those guys are going to have big seasons.
Yeah, I picked Kako as well. I think he's going to be similar in points with Hughes, but I think he'll score more goals, and his team may finish higher in the standings, in my opinion. Uh, Next up, we have the Norris Trophy, Best Defenseman this year. Who do you got?
I had a couple people in mind. Ultimately, I decided on Victor Hedman. I think he's one of the best defensemen in the league right now, on one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. So I think he's certainly a good candidate. I had a hard time picking between him and Morgan Riley. I think Morgan Riley is huge as well, but now that Morgan Riley is going to be playing alongside a guy like Tyson Berry, I think his point production might fall off a little bit, and it might spread out a little bit more evenly. So I decided on Hedman.
I went with the homer decision, Dave. I had to do it at least once. I'm picking Charlie McAvoy, winning Defenseman of the Year. I think he's going to make a step offensively this year, and I think a lot of people really saw how well developed his two-way game is after that playoff run. Um, how many minutes he's able to eat up for the Bruins, and how he's a top defenseman in this league. Definitely the top defenseman on the Bruins, and I think he's only going to get better. So I picked Charlie McAvoy, whether it be a homer opinion or not.
I hope you're
Uh,
right.
the last couple of awards here, Vesna Trophy goaltender of the year.
I got Bobrovsky. I think the Panthers are going to be riding Bobrovsky pretty hard this year. They don't have the best backup goaltender, so obviously if Bobrovsky can play the way he played last year in the playoffs, I think he is a shoe in. I shouldn't say a shoe in. I guess I think he's got some tight competition with guys like Ben Bishop, but I'm taking Bobrovsky.
I picked the other Florida goaltender, Sam Montembeault. No, I'm just kidding. It's Andre Vasilevsky from Tampa Bay. I just think he's going to have one of the most wins for the team. I don't think the Tampa will ride him as much this year, but I think they may rely on him a little bit more as teams start to figure out this Tampa Bay lineup and defense. Next up, the Jack Adams, the best coach or coach of the year. Who do you got, Dave?
Yeah, see, this is a tough one, kind of, but right now, the way I see it, I think Joe Quenneville's taking it with the Florida Panthers. I think the Florida Panthers are just going to have such a. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to blow the roof off the league or anything, but I think getting back into the playoffs and being a really strong competitive team is going to be huge for the Florida Panthers. So I think Joe Quenneville stepping in there, he's an experienced coach who's had a lot of success. I think he can help that team out.
Yeah, and here's my Flyers pick. I got Alain Vigneault bringing the Flyers back to the playoffs in a division spot. Not even the wild card. I think he's going to drive the Flyers back into the playoffs, and he's going to win Coach of the Year. Final two here. Some funny ones that I saw on Sportsnet. Over under 19.5 goals for James Neal, the real deal this year in Edmonton.
I'm saying over. I think last year was an off year. I think he gets back to around 20, 25 goals.
Yeah, I picked over as well and wrote down 22 to 25 goals. I think if he gets some time on with McDavid, I think it's only a matter to like he's just gonna get goals. It's just as simple as that. Um, the final one. Speaking of McDavid, in my case, over under 119.5 points for the Art Ross winner this year.
I think it's going to be really close, but I'm saying under. I'm saying like 117. That's my guess.
I'm picking McDavid 125 points, 80 if he plays 82 games. Picking 125 points for McDavid. Let's go. That's the last of them. So that was a little bit fun to add, especially just to build some hype and make some more predictions going into the season, just to see how wrong we actually are. Because I tend to be wrong, especially with betting and different things like that. This time of year, it's difficult. So we'll see how we do in the pro line picks as well as our future picks in terms of some of those awards and teams there. That was good, Dave. That was a good episode. I think that's all I have right now. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to discuss.
Well, right now I think we talked about a lot of the things that we wanted to talk about. Sure, in the coming days, after the first couple of games in the season are under our belts, we'll have more to talk about, and
Sure.
I'm just really excited. I'm really excited to get started.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch some hockey for sure. Some regular season meaningful games. It should be good. So that being said, this will wrap up the What's Brewing podcast. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for listening.